welcome. Everyone, it's so nice to see so many of you here tonight and be with us. I'm Jane Ginsburg. I'm the president and CEO of Jewish Family Services, and we've been so proud to put on this presentation these past 5 weeks. It's been a great series where we have talked about, and I'm going to just read to make sure that everyone knows all the different sessions we've had. We had prepare to age smart and live safely in your home, prepare to stay connected, prepare for financial and legal matters, prepare to maintain health and wellness, and prepare for end of life. And that's tonight's session. So tonight, I'm so glad and honored that we can welcome Caitlin St. George and Mark Levine to join us to speak to us about all of the burning questions that we have about end of life. JFS is really committed to make sure that everyone in our community is supported at every step of the way. And end of life is a really important time. As we know, people get sick. It happens. We all die. We can't be afraid to talk about it. And we need to make sure that we're prepared for what that means. So tonight, I do want to make sure that everyone knows the kind of ground rules. So before I introduce the presenters, I want to make sure that you all know how to use the Zoom. On your screen, we're going to have the speaker highlighted. So you'll probably see me right now on the screen. And then on the bottom, there's mute and stop video. So please be sure to keep yourself muted, which means that we can't hear you and you can just hear us or whoever's speaking. Also, stop video if you don't want us to see you. Please know that we really do ask that, or want to make sure that you know that if you get up and move where your video is and you're going to do something in the kitchen or another room of your house, that we could see you if you move your video. So if you just need to turn it off, no problem at all. We know you're here and you're listening, and that's not a worry. Also, if you want to chat, I mentioned earlier, we are taking questions throughout the presentation tonight. So Caitlin and Mark will be speaking, but then we're going to make sure that they can answer as many questions as you have. So on the bottom, you'll see, after it says participants, you'll see chat. Just click on that chat box, and on the right, you'll see a chat column come up, and you can type in your questions and we'll try to answer them. If we don't answer them tonight, we are going to send out a recap of all those different sessions that I mentioned with all the important tips and tricks and information that we want to make sure that you have after this series. So I think that I've covered everything. I just want to thank again the coordinators of this program. So Linda Schrager, who leads our Senior Resource Network, thank you for putting it all together. We are so grateful for you, for everything you do for us, and excited for some new opportunities Linda's going to be bringing to JFS in the next year. We'll keep you informed of that. Rachel Hammerstein and Kira Nolte, who are JFS interns, they have been integral to this program, so thank you. And Monica Tan, our Director of Marketing, who's made sure that you have all the information coordinated and getting to you. And of course, Christina Murray, our Executive Coordinator, who is making sure you get all the information. And without further ado then, let me please introduce our speakers for this evening. So Caitlin St. George is the Supervisor of Provider Relations for the Eddy Community Service Division. She's got 20 years of experience in connecting older adults to community services, which includes subacute rehab, retirement, assisted living, home health, and hospice. Caitlin is active in collaborating with other community agencies in planning and holding conferences, resource fairs, and community education. And I'm just going to introduce Mark Levine now, but Caitlin's going to start. Mark Levine, who I'm sure most of you know, is a lifelong resident of Albany, graduating from Albany High School, and then later from Hudson Valley Community College with a degree in mortuary science. He became a licensed funeral director in 1979 and is currently the president of Levine Memorial Chapel in Albany, New York. And it is the second generation of Levine Memorial Chapter, Levine Memorial Chapel. The business was founded by his late father, Robert Levine, in 1952. Mark's a member of the New York State Funeral Directors Association and the National Funeral Directors Association, and he and his wife Jane live in Loudonville. So I'm going to turn it over to Caitlin St. George, and thank you both.
Okay. Has my screen shared? Can you see my, oh,
Yes, there.
and you can see my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Unfortunately, I can't get the bar to go from the top to share it full screen. So I apologize. We're gonna have to go like this. All right, so my name is Caitlin. I'm with the Eddy Community Service Division, and we're going to cover palliative care and hospice. So if any of you have heard me speak before, I always talk about plan when the skies are blue and not when the skies are gray. We're going to cover that, talking about the old approach to care compared to the new approach to care. Going to talk about the similarities of palliative care and hospice, and then the differences between the two. And then we'll go into a little more in depth about what each have to offer. Plan when the skies are blue, not when the skies are gray. Like, why wait for the crisis? It's no fun for anybody planning in the middle of the crisis. And the time to start planning is not when you're laid up in the hospital. And I applaud you for joining the series, because knowledge is power and it puts you in the driver's seat of your care. It's never too early to know the options that are out there. We're going to talk about normalizing palliative care and hospice, making it part of everyday conversation. Talking about taking a realistic look at your diagnosis and options and setting realistic goals. Being proactive and getting services into place. You can't avoid every crisis, but you can be proactive and helping people manage their disease and be successful. So the old approach to care used to be providers would treat their patients with whatever treatment modalities were available. Continue to treat. If their patients started to decline, maybe look for other treatment options. If there are no other treatment options available and their patients still continue to decline, and we're approaching towards the end of life, then that's when they would refer to hospice. The new approach to care really is connecting patients to services earlier rather than later. And it really has been successful. And we've been working with providers in having those conversations as soon as someone is newly diagnosed, and talking about what types of care and services could be available to them should they need it. What is palliative care? What is hospice? Along with talking with providers about having those conversations earlier rather than later, we've been doing many community presentations like the one that we're doing now. We also talk many housing sites, senior centers, libraries, the Albany Guardian Society, and really educating the community again about what is palliative care, what is hospice, normalizing it, empowering people to be able to have those conversations with their doctors and not have that initial startlement if a doctor brings up what hospice is. They might have a better knowledge of what it is and what it isn't. And where we really have seen this be successful with doing the two-front approach with working with providers as well as the community is with hospice. 3.5, 4 years ago, average length of stay on hospice was less than 2 weeks. Now we're looking at the average length of stay on hospice is close to 60 days. So we are definitely making progress. Connecting patients to services, connecting them with palliative care, helping them be successful, managing their disease. Should they start to decline or their quality of life is not what they would like it to be, then making that referral to hospice. All hospice is considered palliative, but not all palliative care is considered hospice. So looking at the similarities, there are similarities with palliative care and hospice. They are both supportive in nature, symptom management, pain management. They are done by a multidisciplinary team of physicians, nurse practitioners, chaplains, social workers. It's really helping that person have a better understanding of their illness, how to be successful, addressing pain, symptom management, providing comfort, really focusing on, they both focus on what is the quality of life for that person, what is important to them, and both look at celebrating that person's life and making their days count and not necessarily counting the days. Both palliative care and hospice can be done in a variety of settings. It can happen in the hospital setting, it can happen in a long-term facility, as well as it can happen in the home. Many times people hear palliative care and they hear the word hospice, and they think of hastening someone's death or giving up. And it's the opposite. Chances are if someone comes on to palliative care and hospice, they're not only going to have a better quality of life, but they are also going to live longer. Both palliative care and hospice support not just the patients, but they're also supporting the families. So how are they different? Palliative care, it is appropriate to have someone start palliative care at any point in time in their diagnosis, whether someone is newly diagnosed, have very little understanding of their disease, or maybe someone's been diagnosed with this disease for a long time and just can't manage it. So at any point in time, someone can be referred to palliative care. And there doesn't have to be a prognosis attached to that, which means there doesn't have to be a life expectancy. Now with hospice, someone has a terminal diagnosis with a life expectancy, a prognosis of 6 months or less. In New York State, though, Medicaid has expanded that 6 months to 12 months or less. With palliative care, people don't have to make the choice between receiving palliative care and continuing their curative treatments. Unlike with hospice, when someone comes on to hospice, they are agreeing to stop any of the curative cares for the specific disease they came onto hospice for. They are agreeing to go a more comfort-oriented, natural, holistic approach to their care. And again, it's just stopping the curative treatments for that specific disease. So, what can palliative care do? Again, it's someone who has that chronic progressive illness. It's considered compassionate and comprehensive care done by a multidisciplinary team. And it's also to address what is ever important to that person's life. And it's not just the physical piece, not just symptom, pain management, providing comfort, but it's addressing physically, spiritually, emotionally, socially, what is important to that person. Palliative care works closely in really having those in-depth conversations with their patients as well as their families and finding out what is important to them. Do they understand the disease? Do they understand the progression of the disease? Do they have realistic expectations of treatment options? Are they able to manage their disease? What's quality of life? What's considered important? And then working with their patient as well as their caregivers and family and aligning those goals with whatever treatment options are available for them. Palliative care can also work with patients and families on working on their advanced care directives. If any of you have, and most of us have, had someone close to us or have worked with someone with a chronic progressive serious illness, especially towards the end of life, it can bring out the absolute best in people, and it can unfortunately bring out the absolute worst in people. So many times you could have a patient who has one ideas of their treatment goals and expectations, and their families or caregivers have something completely different. So the palliative care team, based on ongoing discussions, can really work with the patient and their caregiver, aligning those care goals and making sure someone is on the same page, the patient and their families. That palliative care team can be the link to all the other providers that that patient is working with. They can be that link of communication to what the patient wants. Palliative care really can look at the big picture and help the person understand their illness It can address pain and symptoms, help with those advanced care planning, making those complex decisions. Important to note that palliative care is considered supportive in nature. It's not considered hands-on care. So it is strictly supportive and educational. When to consider palliative care? Again, someone who has that serious chronic progressive illness. I have some examples of illnesses here to consider. Again, any point in time during a diagnosis, people do not have to have a prognosis. They still can continue with all of their treatments. I like to look at that person who has had multiple hospitalizations or ED visits. They just can't manage their disease. Maybe the person has frequent admissions to nursing homes. Also, if someone has a chronic progressive illness, they probably have a lot of doctor scheduled appointments. I also look at how many times is that person calling that doctor's office, even though they don't have an appointment, because they just can't manage in their home. They need more assistance. Palliative care can work on helping that person gain understanding, managing their symptoms, again, aligning those goals of care for the patient and the caregiver, and really looking at, based on those in-depth conversations with patients and their families, are their goals realistic based on their conditions? And then navigating whatever care options are available for them. Other compelling factors: someone is continuing to decline. Maybe they have limited family or social support, low health literacy. Maybe they're having difficulty managing their medications. And again, going back to those doctor's appointments, maybe frequently no showing. Also, palliative care can be utilized if someone had been referred to hospice, but they're just not ready to stop curative treatments. Understanding that people do better with support, so connecting them with palliative care services. Palliative care team can work on, again, those complex conversations and addressing advanced care planning. How do we know what our patients' goals are? We ask. And it is never too early to have those conversations. And if you don't start those conversations, it may be too late because you may not know what that person's wishes are. Conversations are really, really important. Documents are really important to have it all in writing, have it on the same page. But those ongoing conversations on a regular basis, what I want at 59 is going to be different than what I want when I'm 79. Some people may think, well, it's too soon to have those conversations. I don't know how to have those conversations. It's really difficult to have those conversations. And I look at my own parents and having to have those conversations. And my mom, who was a kindergarten teacher, was definitely, I'll go along with whatever you girls think would be best for me. My dad, not so much. He didn't like suggestions. He would get defensive, could be argumentative. And my conversation with my father was, we're going to be talking about how we see things in your home. We're going to be talking about how we see things with your medical conditions. Would you rather us talking with you, or would you rather us talking about you? And he did not like the idea of us talking about him. So that was opening the door a little bit to have that conversation with him. Conversation starters: utilize what's on TV, utilize what's happening with their friends, and having those ongoing conversations. What's important in their life? What matters to them? What makes quality of life? What makes worth living? Again, with palliative care, any point in time in someone's diagnosis, it's comprehensive, compassionate care, helping that person be successful, managing their disease, symptom management, pain management, aligning your care goals with treatment options, helping you navigate those options, and being that link of your wishes with all of your care providers in the community. So on to hospice. Most people, when they hear the word hospice, they don't think an experience and hope. We actually do. When I cited earlier that the average length of stay on hospice 3.5 years ago was less than 2 weeks, to me, that was a tragedy. It means people are passing without getting the care that they desperately need. Caregivers are not getting the support that they desperately need. Our mission at Hospice is we serve those terminally ill patients and their families during the process of dying and grieving, enhance quality of life, again, with compassionate, comprehensive service that respect dignity of those we serve. All insurances follow the Medicare guidelines. It's that terminal diagnosis, life expectancy of 6 months or less. 2 docs have to agree on that. And they are agreeing to stop curative treatments for that one specific disease that they came onto hospice for. Example, maybe someone came onto hospice for cancer that had metastasized. So they are agreeing to stop chemo, radiation, blood transfusions. Chances are they have a lot of other things that are going on. So case by case basis, our doctor is going to look at the other diagnosis and other treatment options, because comfort, symptom management, and pain management are a big part of hospice. So that person with cancer possibly is diabetic and has high blood pressure. We will evaluate the other diseases and medications, and can they still continue those other medications like for high blood pressure and diabetes. Things to look at and who's appropriate for hospice. Someone's having difficulty swallowing, increase in pain, nausea, shortness of breath. Those bottom 2, desire by patient or family to stop uncomfortable and ineffective treatments. Focusing on comfort. The quality of life just may not be what they want it to be going through the curative treatments. Other things to look at, rapid decline in function. Again, multiple hospitalizations in emergency department visits. Decrease in food ache, aspirations of food. Also looking at unattended weight loss. Someone might be eating, they have a great appetite, but they're continuing to lose weight. So that's an indication that something internally is going on. Those bottom 2, again, desire to stop prolonging treatments, unacceptable quality of life by patient or family. Other indicators to look at, failed modalities. There are no other treatment options available for them. So hospice, unlike palliative care, is considered hands-on care, and this is the entire hospice team. The nurse, medical director, social workers, chaplains, aides, volunteers, and complementary therapy. And again, addressing what is important to that person, physically, spiritually, emotionally, socially. If we can address it, this is something that we will. The care plan is divided by having that conversation. And again, what's important to that person? Who on our care team is important that they would like to meet with? Not everybody's going to want a chaplain. If they want someone of faith-based, we have chaplains of many different denominations that we will connect them with. Our care plan changes just as that patient's needs, wishes, and wants change. And again, that care plan is based on conversations to respect the wishes of that patient, support the family, enhance quality of life. And again, addressing physically, spiritually, emotionally, socially, what is ever important to them, focusing on that quality of life, that celebration of life. Managing managing symptoms, addressing pain, maximizing quality of life. There's a myth out there. People tend to think that when someone comes on hospice, we're automatically going to fill their loved one with morphine. That is not the case. One, pain is subjective. So can we utilize a lower dose of a medication to address somebody's pain? Yes, we would utilize morphine if needed, but that's not the first step that we would take. Hospice can help lead towards a good death. And people really would like to pass wherever they call home. A home in a nursing home, assisted living, a home in the community. So why hospice? Again, someone would like to pass wherever they call home. It's providing that care and support not only for the patient, but also that care and support for the families. The hospice benefit is one of the only benefits out there that covers all of the care that's provided for the patient. It covers any medications that are utilized for the patient, as well as any medical equipment might be needed. If someone's living in the community and they need a hospital bed, that is covered by their hospice benefit. Hospice, again, is considered a right of benefit. Someone cannot be denied their hospice benefit if they reside in a nursing home. It is considered a right of benefit. Important to note, if someone is in a nursing home and they meet that criteria of terminal diagnosis, life expectancy of 6 months or less, and they reside in a nursing home and they are private pay, they still would be responsible for covering their room and board. When people come onto hospice, we respect people's rights to make decisions. At any point in time, someone can change their mind. I tell people, if you're not 100% sure, try it. If it's not what you thought it would be, you can take yourself right off hospice. I can say over 95% of our patients and families, they wish they started hospice earlier. They just didn't realize all of the care and support that are provided by the multidisciplinary team. Most people are familiar with Make-A-Wish for Kids. We also have our Wish Foundation for our patients. And just because someone comes on to hospice doesn't mean they don't have things they need to do, want to do, or they wish to do. And if there's something that one of our patients wishes to do and we can make it happen, we will. An example here, we have, this is April, excuse me, from a year ago. She was on hospice, 35, prognosis was not good. Her wish was to go skydiving one more time with her brother and her sister. We were able to get her medically cleared, and I look at this picture and I see joy. I see joy in her face. Another example of our Wish Foundation was we had a gentleman who wanted to go to one more Red Sox game with his grandchildren. We got him medically cleared. Red Sox heard about it, donated the tickets. He was able to have this experience and leave his grandchildren with that memory. Which brings me to our bereavement services. If someone was on hospice and they passed, our grief services would follow their loved ones, obviously only if they wanted them to, for the next 13 months, get through that birthday, that holiday, anniversary of their loved one's death. We have individual counseling, counseling for children, counseling for teens. What most people don't realize is that our grief and bereavement services are available to absolutely anybody, regardless if their loved ones are on hospice or not. So if you know somebody who's struggling with the loss of somebody, have them pick up the phone. Have them call hospice. Our bereavement services are available to anybody, and it's absolutely free. So I leave you with 95% of our patients and families wish they started hospice services earlier. Anybody can refer to hospice. We can be part of that conversation for both hospice as well as the palliative care team. And these are our contact numbers. And I will have, if anyone's interested in the PowerPoint, they can share that with you.
Thank you. That was comprehensive. Really appreciate
Oh,
that.
a lot of information in a short period.
It was a lot, but it was great information. I know a couple of questions have come in. And a few had been answered, but just quickly before we then transition over to Mark, the last question, I'm going to go last first. Does Albany Med or the Teresian House provide for hospice care?
Yes, both.
Great. Good answer. Thanks. Okay. All right. So we'll get back to the other questions in just a bit, because I want to make sure that Mark has time to talk about funeral planning, pre-planning questions regarding funerals, all that good stuff. So Mark, I'm going to hand it off to you. Mark, we did mute you earlier, so you'll have to unmute yourself. And thank you. Mark, you're still muted. Rachel, you could unmute. Oh, there you go.
How about now? Can everyone hear me okay? Great, thank you. Hi, good evening, everyone, and thank you, Jane, and thank you, Linda, for allowing me to be here tonight and speak. Just want to talk first. My name is Mark Levine, and the funeral director at Levine Memorial Chapel in Albany, a business which my father started in 1952. He passed away in 1992, and I've been around this business since I was about 14 years old. And you know, you meet a lot of nice people in the community, and you make a lot of great contacts, but you're certainly dealing with them, you know, at not an easy time whatsoever. So you know, it can be challenging. Every day is different. You don't know what tonight brings, what tomorrow brings, and it can be, like I said, it could be a challenge. But as Caitlin said, we're finding, you know, we see an increase of folks, you know, passing at home for the reasons that she explained, that people want to be, you know, in their own environment. So we're, you know, years ago, it was very rare, like turning the clocks back like 25, 30 years ago, that someone would pass at home. It was not a common thing, but you know, like I said, we're seeing more of that. Pretty much our job from start to finish, you know, 24/7. Someone has a death, whether it be local or out of town. If they're out of town and they care to be have their arrangements held locally, you know, we have a networking system we're a member of the National Funeral Directors Association, and whether it be Florida, California, Arizona, we have a networking system where we can work to transfer that person, you know, back home, you know, to their community, which is, you know, fairly common, you know, more so now with the, you know, people with, you know, the snowbirds, you know, 6 months here, 6 months there. So we see an increase in, you know, Florida deaths, like from this point up until, you know, April. But, you know, like I said, our job is, you know, once you know, require our services, contact us, and we make arrangements to transfer the individual back from the place of passing, you know, to our chapel, and pretty much really turn it over to the family after that. As far as arrangements, just want to point out with COVID, we've seen a lot of changes where, as far as the funeral service itself, we're seeing, you know, many people, we have the service where we can engage the services of a company that will do live streaming. So a lot of people are still, you know, gun shy or almost used to not, you know, really attending the service in person. And a lot of family members were afraid to or couldn't travel. So it's been a great alternative where we've had, you know, 300 people on a live stream video where the families eulogized, you know, their loved one. And we've had situations where we had one recently where the person was local, but they used to live in a different community, and the clergy person from that community really did almost a second eulogy, you know, via the link, and it's worked out very well. You know, we've seen an increase we do a lot of graveside services now. It seems to be on the increase since COVID. A lot of people are just funny about, you know, getting together, you know, still in a large group. So we've seen that, you know, that option, you know, become more common. As far as getting back to planning, we do, you know, many pre-arrangements with folks. And, you know, I always like to point out that pre-planning does not have to mean there has to be any money exchange, or you don't have to pay for your services. It could be, we have a lot of families that come in and just, they want to get their wishes, they're doing it for their children. They want to get their wishes on paper. You know, they want to save their children the task of doing this, and it's a lot easier this way. They don't have to know, you know, we can say your mother wanted this, her wishes were this, her wishes were to be cremated, her wishes were to be buried. She doesn't want any eulogy. She wants the family to do the eulogy. So it's really, you know, a lot of personal preference, as far as, you know, when we do prearrange with a family. As far as financially, what we do, I know our chapel, basically, if you, you know, if you sit down with us and make arrangements, everyone has to get a, you can see this, it's called a general price list. Okay, every funeral home has what's a general price list, which is really, probably best explained as a menu, you know, of items, options. And every family that we serve has to get a copy of this, and every family pays the same thing for XYZ services. As far as if they want a graveside service, for instance, there's no charge for the use of the chapel. If they want cremation, which is fairly, you know, which is also on the increase. There's a lot of different options with cremation. That's been kind of a challenge. A lot of people are under the assumption that if you designate cremation as the form of disposition, that, you know, there can't be any service, there can't be any viewing or gathering, and there's just so many different options, you know, from what we refer to as a direct cremation, where a family might want us just to go to the place of passing, transfer the individual to the funeral home, do all the paperwork, and then transfer the person to the crematory, get the ashes back, secure them, and give them back to the family, versus some people want a regular traditional funeral, and, you know, with a casket and eulogies, and instead of going to the cemetery, we go to the crematory. So there's a lot of different options as far as that goes. But getting back to financially, in New York State, or what we do, if you opt to prepay for your funeral, it's a guaranteed arrangement. You would come in via the phone, or what, you would, you know, select your wishes, and we would write up a contract, and it's a guaranteed arrangement that whether it be, if you do it today, if the death is 10 years from now, we provide our services for really what's in the account at the time. The only thing we can't guarantee are the third party charges, for instance, like the grave opening and closing. If the excavating company is $600 to open the grave today, and, you know, 3 years ago, or 3 years down the road, they're $850. The family just pays the difference between that charge. But as far as you know, our services, they're all guaranteed. Everything's, you know, confidential. As far as cemetery arrangements and things of that nature, it's very important to, if families are going to purchase a plot, that they get a deed, and that they tell their family members, you know, where this deed is, because we've seen a lot of situations where people, I guess, think they have a plot and they really don't. They don't have any paperwork, or so it can be, you know, that's an important thing. Also with prearrangement, it's also important to really let someone know, you know, that the arrangements, you know, are with whatever funeral home you're going to choose. And I know with us, we have a card that we give people to keep on their person, pretty much, that in the event of my passing, you know, notify Levine Memorial Chapel. This way, if they pass alone, whomever is handling things, you know that they have those arrangements. We have some folks that we have some that we have sealed envelopes with the person's not to be opened until the time, with all their wishes. And it's interesting because we've gotten calls, hello, Mark, mom passed away, and we have to come over and make arrangements. And it's like, do you know your mom has arrangements with us? Are you sure? And it's, I can't believe my mother did this. Are you sure? So, and they're relieved that it saved them from any decision making. As far as other changes that we've seen would be, we're doing a lot of what are called like remote arrangements, where we're doing everything on the computer. All of our casket selections are on our website with all the prices. And over the years, a lot of funeral homes had basically they had them physically in a selection room. And prior to COVID, even before, people were there, it's an uneasy room to be in. I mean, I'm in there all the time. So we did away with our, physical caskets, and I find it easier psychologically that people can just go online at their own convenience and, go through, all the selections, and all of our options are pretty much explained on our website. And also we're seeing a change in a lot of the, as far as like eulogies, we're seeing more family members opt to, if I'm making arrangements, and I'll say, do you have a particular clergyman or affiliation that you want us to contact that clergy? And a lot of people are saying, just we're fine. My grandson's going to do the eulogy. My brother's going to do the eulogy, and makes sense because who knows the person better than most of the time clergy. If someone, back to the pre-planning, if someone's going to go on Medicaid, for instance, and they have to do what's called a Medicaid spend down, what happens is we set up the account. It's not part of their assets. They can come in, they can select their funeral, and it has to be set up into a irrevocable account versus a revocable account. This is just when someone's going on Medicaid, and it has to be used for funeral expenses. And we provide the family with, the contracts and the paperwork to present to Medicaid. They want to see that it's, that it's been done.
Mark, actually, that was a question was just asked regarding that. And the question was, are the funds that are given to you at the contract, do they remain with you, or do you have to put them into a restricted bank account?
Yeah, we can't touch in New York State. That's a good point. In New York State, we cannot touch the money. It goes into an escrow account. I tell people, Jane, it's like the best way I explain it to people, it's like a CD in the individual's name and trust for the funeral home. It's their money. There's some people that have prepaid, with us, and they opt to relocate to California to be with their children, and they buy a plot there. They cremate it there. They have no intentions of, coming back here. Fully refundable. Also, they're very strict with the laws. If a funeral home goes out of business, or if there's any change in ownership, legally in New York State, that individual that the account whose name it's in has to be notified. You have to be offered your money back, or it can be transferred to another funeral home. So they're really very, very strict on that. But the account earns interest. Years ago it was a lot different, but there'd be an excess. I remember giving checks back to people for $2,000 because they've had pre-need for years, and they were up like 10%. So what was in the account exceeded the costs of the funeral. But going gone are those days, but, and a lot of people, like I said, just really come in and, put their wishes down. It's just for peace of mind, but it's just, I just like to stress that, if someone does do that, that they definitely tell, a family member, or if they're alone, if they have no family, they should tell an attorney. Someone should really know that where their arrangements are. Is there another question?
There were lots of questions, actually. So that was one
Okay.
of them, actually, that we'd had in advance of, if you don't have family, what do you do? So you just said, make sure that you do work with an attorney or some trusted individual.
Yeah, if you don't have, there's usually someone
Right.
out there. But I mean, we've had situations where, we've gotten a call, the person's passed in a hospital and they can't, find the next of kin. You get the coroner's involved and they try to locate, and then, 7 days afterward, we get a call from the family that they were notified of the passing of their mother,
Do you
father, sister.
Does it have to be a specific person that was already pre-designated? If you were already working with someone in the family, it can be anyone from
And
the
there's
family.
we have like an agent form that the family can, fill out, or the individual can fill out, sign, giving this person, permission to make any changes. Also, as far as, once you bring that up, is you're really not allowed to change a pre-arrangement. You can, but it's really, there's a fine line there. We've had family members opt for, let's say the individual that did this opt for cremation, and the part of the family could be, they're totally against it. They want a traditional burial. So it becomes like, those get a little touchy with their back and forth. That's when I'll be back, I'm going to excuse myself, here, and they're saying, Mark, what's better, to live? That's the best. There's no good, but cremation and burial, that we've come across, quite a bit.
So you also talk about burial. I know that there's also a trend, and someone asked a question about echo or green burials in New York State. Do you, does Levine do those, or can you explain what those
We
are
do
for people
those.
who don't know?
We've had two, and what it is, it's, pretty much everything, the casket has to be all wood, but there's an area locally in this unit, Most Holy Redeemer Cemetery on Route 7, they have an area, for green burials where you can the individual could even be wrapped in a sheet and placed, almost like they do that in Israel, placed in the grave. And a friend of mine from another funeral home had one the other day, a green burial, and it was unfortunately it was an infant, but they needed to get a casket, like an all wood casket, which can't have any metal parts, and it's pretty interesting. The grass, it's not your typical area of a cemetery where it's mowed, and it's you've got high grass. It's interesting.
Is there a different cost? I know someone's asked about cost too, and that was a question that we had in advance of. Can you ballpark? I certainly understand that costs fluctuate as costs of everything fluctuate, inflation, everything happens. Can you ballpark some general costs of funerals?
Sure. The nationwide average is roughly about $10,000, which would be all of our services. The average casket, most of your cemeteries now require what's called a burial vault, which is a concrete enclosure that's in the ground before we get to the cemetery. And
so that's required by the cemetery,
that's a cemetery requirement.
Okay.
Yeah, there's certain states that require it, but even your Orthodox cemeteries here locally require it, because what it does, it maintains the integrity of the plot. These cemeteries were getting a lot of calls that, I just went out to visit my mother or father's grave, and it collapsed, and a lot of maintenance issues. But now, since most of these cemeteries have implemented that, they've had very few problems. But I would say about $10,000. I mean, that would include transferring the person from the place of passing, the use of the funeral home, the casket, the vault, the obituary notices in the paper, the limousine, the hearse. But, people have the chance to, like, we have a service Thursday, and the family, had the option of putting a canopy and chairs, at the gravesite. Some people are just, don't need, if it's gonna be a nice day, if, tomorrow is a different story because it's supposed to be so, but yeah, there's a lot of different options. A lot of people are getting away from the formalities of limousines. Like, we had a service today, and the folks used their own vehicles, and that was fine. So there's a lot of changes taking place. More so would be the first with the live stream, because we're seeing children of the deceased that have opted not to travel cross country. It's kind of the next best thing, and we get a copy or copies of the service for the family members, and provide that. But it's a good service, and it's kind of the next best thing. But as far as costs, yeah, I would say right around $10,000, and
Okay.
Like our
Now, I know
caskets.
typically, also many people will have a clergy member officiate the service too. So I know, for those who don't know, JFS has a community chaplain. If someone's not affiliated with a community synagogue and they wanted a Jewish chaplain, but I imagine that depending on the funeral home, there are associations with all kinds of chaplains as
Right.
well, and clergy if someone doesn't
And
have.
he's been doing a lot for us.
Good. Well,
individually.
Rabbi Ami Munson, for the plug.
Yes,
for him.
he's,
He's fantastic.
Yeah,
We're so happy he is a part of our
and
team.
people are very comfortable. I've gotten calls, after the funeral from the family, thank you for recommending him. Because there's a lot of families that are unaffiliated, with the temple, and the funeral we have Thursday, the burial is going to be on Temple Israel Cemetery. They're not members. They bought plots on Temple Israel, but the family had a request for a female, a Reform female rabbi. So, we go that if they're members of, and this happens, if they're members of Congregation ABC and the cemetery is under their, let's say, for instance, Temple Israel, technically, if you're supposed to notify, let's say, the rabbi from the cemetery that's under their roof. But there's many people now that are just, they could be a member of a certain temple, but they might have there might be certain clergy that have visited their mother or father in the hospital. They've established a
They have that
rapport,
connection.
with them, and they want that particular, clergy member. But, and then how it works, as far as people always ask, very common, what about honorarium? What does the rabbi get for a funeral? How do we do this? Or how does it work? Basically, if someone's a member of Congregation Beth Emeth and they use a rabbi from, Beth Emeth, it's part of their members, part of their duties. If you go out of if you're a non-member,
Like if you're out of network, right? You're in network.
yeah, non-member, all the rabbis in this area have a standard fee for a funeral of $650. That's if they're a non-member. So, but like, I'm honest when I'm sitting with people making arrangements, and if they're members, and people still usually want to, what should we do? For the, we understand that it's part of our, life cycle event, that it comes with a package. But then, I tell them what the fee is for a non-member, and they can just do whatever they feel comfortable with. But
So we have one more question, and then I have a couple of things
Sure.
to add to. But the final question that we had been asked was, what is the procedure if someone wants to donate their body to Albany Med, the medical school, donating to science. So can you talk through that procedure? And
Yeah,
then-
there's a funeral home in Albany called Hands Funeral Home that basically have a contract with Albany Medical College.
Mhm.
And I actually know a woman last week that passed. She donated by Albany Medical College, and what they do is, there's no fee involved. They pretty much transfer the person from the place of passing to Albany Medical Center after the studies are done. Sometimes it could be a year, sometimes it could be 2 years. The person is cremated by Albany Medical Center, and the family can obtain, the ashes, or sometimes what they'll do every year, at Albany Rural Cemetery in Manans, there's a service for anyone that's donated. They put the ashes in like one grave and they're all marked, designated.
Mhm.
But yeah, there's no fees, but sometimes it's sometimes it's a year, like 2 years. But I've had folks that have donated, their loved one to Albany Medical College, and after the cremation, they've wanted something, a burial on a cemetery, where we got involved, and we transferred and so it was kind of like a graveside service.
Little
So they can do
hybrid.
anything they want after Albany Medical Centers or whatever teaching hospital is, once they're done with their studies.
Great info. Thank you. I think that's all the questions that we had tonight, but I just wanted to say thank you again, Mark, to you, Caitlin, to
You're
you.
welcome.
I think the biggest takeaway for me is, if anyone, for last week, I know we discussed the MOST form, and the person who helped create that and really promote that form throughout New York State, Pat Bombo, would always say, and this is my takeaway from this evening is, and since we just celebrated Thanksgiving, no apple pie until you tell me how you want to die. So it was a conversation with your family, and it sounds really awful, but also kind of so important, right? That if you don't have those conversations with your loved ones, it's so hard to make those decisions when everyone is at such a raw emotional state. So we at JFS are here for you. We're here to help talk you through all the different stages as we've done through this program. And I just wanted to make sure that everyone knows that we have grief and loss counseling. We've got counseling for all kinds, but for those going through grief and loss, we have, as I mentioned, we have a community chaplain who is available for pastoral care, both during that last transition time and also certainly after. As we just discussed, he can certainly participate in any funeral activities and Shiva, and we have a variety of services for you, and just want to make sure that if we work with so many community partners who are just so critical in this entire community to make sure that you are all well supported. So again, I wanted to thank our sponsors for the evening and for this entire series. I, of course, don't have it up in front of me, but I do know Albany Med, of course, and St. Peter's, Karen Glazer, licensed real estate broker, Harris Beach, Ophthalmic Plastic Surgery, Ted Volatis, Jewish Federation, Northeastern New York, and Theodore Strauss Endowment Fund, Congregation Beth Abraham Jacob, Congregation Beth Shalom, and Temple Israel. So I wanted to thank them again. I also wanted to make sure to remind you that we will be sending out an evaluation for this particular session, and then so many of you have filled them out ongoing, which has been so helpful for us throughout, and we will be sending out some follow-up information for you in the coming weeks. And then we really would like to do, not necessarily just do this again, but do this kind of thing again for you. We have found that when we offer these kinds of programs, we get a great response, great questions asked, and we know that you want to know the information. So if we can't provide the programs, we have lots of partners who we can direct you to if they're already doing it in the community. We don't need to duplicate. So please continue to contact us, ask us questions, request us to do different kinds of programs, or to point you in the right direction. And just wanted to say thank you again. Thank you to Mark and Caitlin. Thanks to all of our coordinators, and have a great evening.
Thank you.